disclosure. Disclosure, I did, no AI was harmed in this process, but I did use AI to help me with these dates and you know, what's happening in these eras. But if you look at the AI era, it sort of runs from 1950s to 2020s. If you look on the AI side, what are the kind of things that we're seeing today in AI? What are the risks? And this is not an exhaustive list, by the way. But you're looking at bias in algorithms, and that can be inherent or introduced. Inherent meaning, if I asked you today, and this is, I'm just going to quickly test your bias meter here. How many nurses do you know? You know a couple of nurses? You know nurses, right? How many male nurses do you know? Let's say percentage-wise, if you had to put a percentage to it. Less than 10%? Yeah? So if you have an AI little tool running around and learning from the internet as it does, and learning from data sources as it does, there's bias in your data source. And nobody introduced the bias. It is pure and simple because there are more female nurses than male nurses. Well, there's your bias. So when ChatGPT then gives you an answer based on the prompt that you give it, it will say to you, the nurse, she is dressed in white and she works from 7 to 7 or whatever, but she. And it will not even pick up that they are actually male nurses as well, because the bias and the discrepancy is so huge. Same thing with schoolgirls. If you said schoolgirl, and you prompted one of these generative AIs that will give you a picture, it will come up with sexualized schoolgirls, sexy little schoolgirls, short dresses, you know, open shirts or whatever. That's the context. That's the bias in the data sets. If you say to it schoolboy, it will come up with a normal schoolboy. What is introduced bias? And that is where your coders are very important. Your coders, the people that are generating the code and writing these AIs, come with their own sets of preconceived ideas and biases in life, right? So it is critically important that this is probably one of the first steps is when you are, as a risk professional, looking at your data scientist teams, and if you are now coding and you know, programming and whatever, and going to go down that road, you should definitely look at the makeup of your team. Because you're introducing bias without even knowing it. People don't even know that they're doing this, right? So is your team diverse enough, right? Privacy concerns. The need for data, it consumes data at the rate of knots. So of course, where does it get the data from? It gets it from Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, you name it. And it trains on that data. And it's important maybe just to make this note that don't use AI and ChatGPT as a research, not a research tool, but like you use Google. And that is why there is also that risk of hallucinations. So you'll put a prompt into, let's say, ChatGPT, and it will come back with wrong information sometimes. And why is that? Because it doesn't work like Google. It doesn't go and then says, oh, here's what I found on the internet or whatever. How it trains, it will take masses of data, and it will throughout now, it will learn, oh, this is a cat. Because it looks from all of the characteristics that I've picked up and learned over all of my data sets that this is a cat. So it is about prediction, it's about pattern recognition, right? Behavioral profiling. If I use AI to profile my customers and I'm a bank, you know this, guys, this is not new news for you. I mean, this is all over the news. You can get decisions that are wrong, right? One person gets a loan, same risk profile, other person doesn't get it because of some little characteristic in that person's profile. So these are the kind of risks. So the kind of controls, lack of transparency, the black boxes, we don't know. And I saw a video like in the last 2 weeks of the CEO of Google, where they asked him about something that their AI has done. And they asked him, but how did this happen? He says, we don't know. We don't know. Because here's the thing, with that hockey stick, when that happened, instead of us programming and coding and giving instructions to AI, it is now generating and teaching itself and learning. It's machine learning. So you don't know. They don't know what patterns it's discerning. Because with our human minds, we simply don't have that capacity to understand why has it come up with this answer. So that box thing is a big issue in AI. Copyright issues. If you're using AI, just sort of say that you do it. Don't present it as your own work. And these are normal things. You know these things. I don't need to tell you this. Legislation around at the moment, the EU GDPR Act, our own POPIA, Artificial Intelligence Act in the EU. There are many, many acts in the law today, and they're growing as we speak. It's important for you to just have a look at the main principles. Put it into ChatGPT, ask them to give you an explanation and similarities and whatever. Give me a summary of all of the acts in the law today on AI. I think it's important reading for us. Not just compliance, I think risk professionals also. You need to know what's out there. Then independent oversight by regulatory bodies and penalties, public awareness and education. So that's what's happening in the AI side. On the ethics side, it's very much human-centric at the moment. So in that period anyway. Human-centric. So we must protect the human. That is the objective. We don't want discriminatory outcomes like in hiring or the credit decisions that I've just spoken about. And this is one of, with my science fiction reading and so on, this was probably the earliest AI code of conduct that came out. It was Isaac Asimov in the 60s, around about the 60s. We had the 3 laws of robotics. And I found that absolutely fascinating. We have teams and reams of legal people today sitting and drafting these codes and acts and so on. Isaac Asimov wrote that first code in the 60s with his 3 laws. And then ethical guidelines prioritize human rights, fairness, and accountability. So that's that period. The responses are typically control-orientated, regulation, transparency measures, and then this human in the loop, HITL. Those are the kind of controls that you're looking at in that era, but still also today. If we go into the AGI era, Artificial General Intelligence, this is why you're now starting to see AI with human qualities and human capabilities, human-like capabilities emerging, and autonomous decision-making. That's scary. If you have a self-driving car, and there's a potential to hit either an old woman or a very young child, it's going to decide based on who knows. We don't know. And this is something else I would like to just sort of discuss with you, is this virtual immortality, one of the ethical dilemmas in this era. If I asked you today, if you lost someone that died, would you want AI to recreate that person so that you can interact with that person again? Yeah?
That could be great.
Would you do that? No? How many would do it? Who would not do it? Lots of no's. We don't have time in the space of this 30 minutes to go into the whys and why you say that. But that's a dilemma, right? And you know what? It can be done. I saw a video, a little AI-generated video, where this mom was standing there with a virtual reality headset on, and her child emerged, but the child had died. And this child emerged from behind the tombstone and started speaking to her. Devastating, guys. Devastating. Okay. On the ethical side, emphasis on maximizing societal benefits. Now we're moving more from an individual or humanistic kind of approach to society, starting to look more at our environment. There's an impact on the environment. Every little prompt that you write that says, tell me a new what's it? Knock knock joke, is like a glass of water that it brings, metaphorically speaking. It uses environmental resources at a scary level. Accountability, responsibility. Should AI have moral rights? Now with this AI starting to look like and feel like and engage like a human, should they have rights? These are the things that we're going to have to grapple with. And what are the kind of responses that we can have as a society here? We can have governance structures. We can have, our board needs to look at that, needs to sign off on the next AI before we deploy it. We can have ethical frameworks, we can have ethical audits going on, continuous monitoring. All of these things are things that I know is not foreign to your ears, right? It's what we do anyway. Risk assessment protocols to evaluate the societal impact before deployment. What is important here is that in this era, we're also starting to look at, if we can't, because I think there's one thing that we really need to realize. Up to now, we've been in control. We were the most intelligent beings on this planet. It's going to change. It's changing. In front of our eyes. So how can you then be in control? Because the most intelligent being, if you want to call AI that, or entity or whatever, is the one that controls and that regulates. Right? So how can they not have rights? Ethical dilemmas regarding treatment and societal roles. We've spoken about one of them. And then if we look at artificial superintelligence, 2050s and beyond, who knows when this date is, right? This is where, as I've said, we are now in an era where, and by the way, there's no reason for us not to doubt that it can get there. As I say, it's one of the scenarios. One of the other scenarios is that it gets there anyway, guys. But by the way, I don't think that we're not going to get there. We're going to get to my personal opinion, which is why I said I'm not here from the Compliance Institute. I don't doubt it for a minute that we're going to get to that level of intelligence. The question we have to ask ourselves is, what is the scenario that's going to play out? What is that? Is it a utopian future, or future? Is it a dystopian future? Or is AI going to be not around anymore? Because how do we stop this? Can we stop it? I don't think we can. Who's going to stop? Because the moment Google stops, or OpenAI stops, and not everybody else stops, they're going to just fall behind at the, in a matter of a month. So they're in an arms race.